They say family is forever. But what if one day you woke up and realized you were never really part of it? My name is Eleanor. I'm 60 years old, and this year, on my birthday, I set the table for 8. But no one came. That was the moment I understood. Something had been wrong for a long time. I just didn't want to see it. This story isn't just about a family dinner that never happened. It's about the lies we live with, the masks people wear, and what you find when you stop pretending everything's fine. By the end of it, someone will be gone, and someone will finally come home. If stories like this speak to your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell me in the comments, have you ever felt like the people you love were quietly leaving you behind? This channel is for people like us. Ordinary lives, unforgettable truths. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I'm 60 years old, and on the day of my 60th birthday, I learned the hardest truth of my life. Sometimes, the people you love the most are the very ones who leave you behind, quietly, slowly, and without a goodbye. It started like any birthday should, with hope. I had the table set by noon. It wasn't just a meal. It was something I'd been planning for weeks, quietly, carefully, down to the last polished fork and folded napkin. I even bought a new tablecloth, pale yellow with stitched sunflowers along the edges. It reminded me of summers when Josh was little, running barefoot through the backyard with a popsicle melting down his arm. He'd bring me dandelions like they were roses. Now he had children of his own, 3 of them, and they were all coming today. The thought made my heart flutter the way it used to before Christmas morning. 60. That number had hung in the air like fog all week, heavy and strange. Not old, I told myself. Not young either. Just somewhere in between, teetering. It made me think about time, about the things I'd done right and the things I'd let slip. But not today. Today wasn't about regrets. I'd baked my famous apple pie the night before. Not the store-bought kind. Real crust, real cinnamon, hand-peeled apples. I roasted a rosemary chicken, mashed potatoes with garlic and cream, sweet corn casserole. Josh loved that one when he was 12. I wasn't sure if he still did, but I hoped. The chairs were placed just right, 8 of them. I even pulled out the good china, the ones with the little blue flowers I never used. For special occasions, I'd always said. Well, wasn't 60 special enough? I texted him again around 3. Just a quick, can't wait to see you. With a smiley face I wasn't sure I liked using, but it felt friendlier than silence. I sent a similar message to Lauren, his wife. Not that she ever responded much. Still, I tried. Susan, my sister, had said they might come a little late. Traffic, she warned. You know Richard and his last-minute stops. I chuckled when I read it. Some things never change. By 4, I lit the candle in the centerpiece. Cinnamon spice. Familiar. Warm. I turned on the old record player. Something soft. Something that wouldn't interrupt conversation. If there ever was any. I kept checking the driveway. By 5:30, the mashed potatoes had gone a little stiff around the edges. I stirred them, reheated them, and put a foil tent over the casserole. Josh always said, "Don't worry, Mom, we're never on time," and I told myself that again, trying to make it sound sweet instead of sour. 6, 7. The candle flickered lower. The chicken started to dry. The pie sat untouched under a glass dome like some kind of monument. Still no word, not a call, not even a read receipt. I sat down at the head of the table and stared at the plates, the folded napkins, the flickering light dancing over empty glasses. It was a beautiful table. It looked like a postcard, if you didn't know what was missing. I thought of calling. Then I thought of what I'd say. Where are you? Did you forget? Is everything okay? But none of those sounded like questions I wanted to ask. Instead, I picked up one of the glasses, filled it with water, and took a sip. It was quiet, almost too quiet. My hand trembled slightly, and I blamed it on the cold. I waited another hour. By 8:30, the candle had burned to a stub. I turned off the music. My feet ached from standing. I packed the food into containers. I put away the pie last. I didn't cry. Not really. A tear or two, maybe. I told myself it was the onions I chopped earlier, and when I turned off the lights in the dining room, I left one plate on the table, just in case there'd been some mix-up, just in case they came later, just in case it was all just one big, silly misunderstanding. But deep down, under the waiting and the wishing, a thought curled quietly like smoke. What if they never meant to come at all? The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Something in me had stayed restless all night, like the house itself had been holding its breath. I wandered into the kitchen barefoot. The silence felt heavier than usual. No dishes clinking, no low hum of conversation, no little feet thumping up the stairs like they used to in summer visits past. Just the faint tick of the wall clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator. The plate I'd left out was still there. I hadn't touched it. It looked like a relic now, or maybe a reminder. I cleared it and wiped down the table without thinking. My coffee tasted dull. I reached for my phone, still half expecting a missed call, or at least a text. Nothing. Just a couple of spam emails and a weather alert for rain. I don't know why I did it. Habit, maybe. But I opened Facebook. I don't post much. I just like to check in on everyone now and then. The kids, their schools, the photos. It helps me feel close. That's when I saw it. The first image caught me off guard. Ellie, my granddaughter, grinning in a turquoise swimsuit on the deck of a ship, with the sea stretching behind her like a painting. Below that, Max holding a chocolate ice cream cone, his cheeks sticky, Lauren behind him laughing into the sun. Her sunglasses sparkled. She looked beautiful. Then more. Josh on a lounge chair in sunglasses, sipping something tropical. Toby sleeping in a shaded stroller near the pool. A group photo at sunset, arms around each other, wind in their hair, all glowing with that look people get when they're 1,000 miles from obligation. There was even a cake in one of the photos, a cake with candles. I counted them once, then again, 60. The caption read, "Best surprise cruise for the best mom-in-law. Cheers to family, laughter, and sunshine." Mom-in-law? I stared at the screen, my thumb frozen above the glass. No tag, no mention of me, no message. Just strangers in my own blood smiling into a sky I wasn't under. It wasn't just the cruise. It was the clarity, the clean, quiet ache of it. I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been excluded. The photos were posted late last night. So they'd been there. They were there. While I sat at my table reheating mashed potatoes, they were toasting cocktails and posing on balconies. I looked at the post again. Surprise cruise. Was it spontaneous? Planned last minute? Surely someone would have told me, or invited me, or even mentioned it in passing. But no one had, because no one meant to. I clicked through more photos. Some had filters. Some had little jokes in the captions. Others were just candid moments, laughing over breakfast, kids in matching shirts, Lauren and Josh holding hands. They weren't hiding this. It wasn't a mistake. I turned off my phone and sat very still. The clock ticked louder now. The refrigerator buzzed sharply, like it was agitated. Outside, rain had started to tap against the window in soft, steady rhythms. I thought about calling Susan. Maybe she knew. Maybe she was there too. Maybe I'd missed something. I opened her page, and there they were, Susan and Richard, arm in arm on a white sand beach. "Family getaway," she'd written, feeling grateful. No call, no explanation, not even a postcard. I stared at her face in the photo, framed in sunlight and serenity. She looked relieved. It made no sense. Why hadn't anyone told me? Was it a mistake, a misunderstanding, a missed invitation? Or was I the only one who didn't get invited? A chill passed through me, not from the weather. Something deeper, something darker. A question, sharp-edged and growing louder in my chest. How long had I been slowly written out of their lives without even noticing? I didn't leave the house for 2 days. The photos haunted me, not just because they existed, but because of what they said without saying anything. It wasn't just the cruise. It was how comfortable they all looked, as if I'd never been part of their world at all. I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I scrolled backward through timelines. Not mine, theirs. I went through Lauren's page first. Most of her profile was curated and carefully cheerful. Smiling selfies with her green juice, perfectly staged holiday decor, captions that always seemed to include phrases like grateful or ta blessed life. But when I started looking closely, something small and awful began to appear. There was Ellie's 5th birthday party, a mermaid-themed celebration in their backyard. I remembered hearing about it after it happened. Lauren had said it was last minute, that it wasn't really a party. There were 24 kids in the background. Then Max's soccer tournament 2 summers ago. I remember calling Josh the night before to wish him luck. He'd said, "It's not a big deal, Mom, just a scrimmage." The photo showed trophies, banners, even a rented snow cone truck. There was a Mother's Day brunch at a vineyard. Lauren, her own mother, her sister, and Josh. They were all there. They all smiled into the camera, arms wrapped tightly together. I wasn't even mentioned. Page after page, post after post. I watched myself disappear, not with one big erasure, not in some cruel, dramatic break, but like water draining slowly from a tub. One forgotten phone call, one unreturned text, one missed invitation that wasn't really missed because it was never meant for me in the first place. It didn't start with the cruise. It started long before that. I had just refused to see it. On the 3rd day, I opened the old photo box in the hallway closet. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to remember that I had once been in the center of things, not just orbiting around them. There were pictures of Josh in overalls at age 4, mud on his knees and popsicle juice on his chin. Pictures of him in his prom tuxedo, eyes wild with nerves. Lauren was in some of the later ones, back when they first started dating. I remember thinking she looked too polished even then. I pulled out a photo of Josh holding baby Max. His face was soft with pride, the kind that doesn't fit into words. I traced the edge of the photograph, thinking how quickly pride can be replaced by distance, by silence. And then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. It was Ellie's 2nd Christmas. We'd all gathered at my house. Susan brought that terrible fruitcake, and Richard wouldn't stop talking about interest rates. Lauren was already quiet then, always checking her phone. She had stepped outside several times that day to take calls. I remember catching her in the hallway once. She didn't see me watching her through the cracked door. She was smiling, but it wasn't the smile she gave around Josh or the kids. It was something else, something colder, something like calculation. I had written it off. New mother, tired, distracted. But what if that had been something else entirely? What if I'd ignored the first signs because I wanted to believe we were still a family? That night, I couldn't sleep. I made tea just to hold something warm. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table I had dressed up for my birthday. and stared at the place where Toby usually sat when they visited. If I'm honest, I always felt different around him. Not because I loved him less, never that, but because there was something about him I couldn't name. A look, a rhythm, a way he tilted his head like he was listening for something no one else could hear. He didn't look like Josh. Not really. Not like the twins did. He had darker hair, deeper eyes. He always felt a little distant, as if some part of him wasn't entirely ours. I used to tell myself it was just his personality. But now I started wondering what else I had told myself to make things easier. What else I had not seen. The next morning I opened the mailbox and found a letter addressed to E. Brooks, in tight, deliberate handwriting. No return address. Just a single line written on the back. You deserve to know the truth. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, and what I saw when I opened it made my breath catch in my throat. It wasn't a letter. It was a DNA test, and next to the bolded words, probability of paternity, 0%, was a name I didn't recognize. Not Josh's, someone else's. And underneath, a handwritten note. Please contact me. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to make things right. The envelope sat on the kitchen table for almost an hour before I touched it again. I read that line. You deserve to know the truth. Over and over, like it might change into something softer if I stared long enough. But it didn't. The name on the test didn't belong to anyone I knew. I tried to tell myself it was a mistake, a scam. But in the pit of my stomach, something old and cold began to stir. Something I hadn't felt since the week after Josh left for college and stopped calling home every Sunday. That particular kind of knowing. Not the kind that comes from facts, but the kind that comes from absence. Still, nothing in the envelope gave me a phone number or return address. Only that line. Please contact me. I turned the page over. Blank. So I did what anyone does in this strange digital age. I Googled. The name on the DNA test was Mark Wallace. A quick search gave me hundreds of results. Insurance agents, musicians, realtors. But one stuck out. A local listing. Same town. A small profile photo. A man in his early 40s dressed in a wrinkled button-up shirt, standing next to a community center banner. There was something tired in his eyes. I clicked his name again. And there, buried deep in the comments of an old fundraiser page, was a photo of him. Younger, cleaner shaven, standing beside a woman, Lauren. Not smiling at the camera, but holding his hand. I stared at the image. Lauren. Not pregnant yet. No wedding ring. Just the soft closeness of two people who had once believed in each other. The timestamp read, May 2014. Toby was born in early 2015. By the time I looked up, it was nearly noon, and my tea had gone cold. My heart was thudding too loudly for something so still. I went to the window. Outside, clouds were heavy, the kind of gray that swells before a storm. That's when I saw him, standing at the bottom of my driveway, just standing there. A man in a dark green jacket, hands in his pockets, head bowed as if he was rehearsing something. I didn't recognize him at first, but there was something familiar in the set of his shoulders. He looked up, and our eyes met. I opened the door before he could knock. Mrs. Brooks? He asked, voice soft, unsure. Yes. I'm Mark Wallace. He stood just inside the entryway, holding his hat like it was something fragile. He was taller than I expected, with rough hands that looked like they belonged to someone who fixed things, or tried to. I wasn't sure if I should come, he said. Then why did you? Because someone has to. I said nothing, just led him to the kitchen, where everything felt too clean and too quiet. He didn't sit until I did, didn't speak again until I gave him permission with a single nod. I don't want to cause trouble, he began. I'm not here to take anything from anyone, especially not from Toby. But I needed you to know, because I don't think they were ever going to tell you." My throat tightened. "Tell me what?" Mark reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folder, the same document I'd already seen. But this time he brought more. Emails, photos, hospital records, dates, and a letter written in Lauren's handwriting. "I was with Lauren for nearly 2 years, he said. "We lived together. We were serious. She talked about marriage, about starting a family." My heart started beating harder. And then one day she was gone. Gone? Vanished. No note. Just disappeared. A few months later, I saw on social media she was pregnant, already with someone else. Your son. I clenched my fingers around the armrest. I tried to reach out. She blocked every number, deleted everything. I let it go for years. I thought maybe she was protecting the child from something, or maybe it really wasn't mine. Until he pulled out a photo of Toby, printed from the internet. School picture, freckles, half smile. Until I saw this. His voice caught. I knew. I just knew. "And the test?" I asked. "I managed to get a cheek swab. It wasn't easy. I paid a lab to compare it to my own. I wanted to ask how he even got the swab, but the question lodged in my throat. I looked again at the papers. The test was legitimate. The signatures matched. The numbers were brutal in their certainty. Probability of paternity. 99.99987% Toby wasn't Josh's son. I sat back in my chair. The silence between us thickened. Mark didn't press. He didn't try to comfort me. That earned him more of my respect than any apology could have. "Why now?" I finally asked. He looked me in the eyes, and I saw something there. Not calculation, not bitterness, just grief. "Because I was too weak to fight for him back then," he said, "and I've spent every year since regretting it." The clock on the wall ticked loudly again. The light outside had turned a shade darker. I didn't know what this meant yet. Not for me, not for Josh, not for Toby. But deep inside, under the swirl of disbelief and confusion and betrayal, one thought pulsed louder than the rest. If Mark was telling the truth, then what else had Lauren lied about? Mark didn't stay long. He left the folder behind as if knowing I'd read it again in the quiet hours of the night. And he was right. I did. Twice. After he walked out into the thick gray dusk, I stood at the window watching until his car pulled away, its red tail lights blinking at the end of the street, like a warning I didn't yet understand. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed with the light off, listening to the soft groan of the house settling. I could hear the fridge humming, the occasional tick of the heater, and my thoughts. They moved like mice in the walls, quick, sharp, hard to catch, each one leading to another, not just about Toby, about everything. The unexplained absences, the changes in Josh, the way Lauren had slowly, over years, taken over all the family communication, and then started trimming it down, trimming me down, until only the most polite, hollow gestures remained. Texts with no punctuation, cold smiles at holidays, children suddenly too busy to call. I thought about Susan, about that look she'd had in that cruise photo, peaceful, relaxed, but distant. I picked up the folder again and flipped back through Lauren's old emails to Mark. They weren't romantic, not the ones he'd printed, but they were revealing. She mentioned financial stress, mentioned timing, an advantage, and a future that required stability. She never once mentioned love, and then there was a sentence that stopped me. "This time, I'll do it right. I'll make sure they don't interfere." They. I read it again and again. Who was they? His parents, friends, or families? By morning, something in me had clicked into place. I wasn't angry. I was alert. And the first thing I did, after brushing my hair and making coffee I didn't drink, was pull down the cardboard box marked medical records from the top shelf of the hallway closet. Inside were folders from every pediatric visit I'd ever attended with my grandchildren. Lauren had stopped inviting me to those a few years back, but I'd been there for the early ones, the twins' vaccinations, Toby's first ear infection. I scanned the paperwork, flipping through pages until I found the birth certificate. Toby Brooks, father Joshua Brooks, mother Lauren Carter. Nothing unusual, except the dates. Toby was born in February 2015. Josh and Lauren's wedding was in October 2014. I remembered it. A whirlwind ceremony. Small, rushed. Lauren had worn a white dress with long sleeves and no lace. No veil, no bump. But the math was simple and brutal. If Toby was born in early February and full term, she would have conceived in May, 5 months before the wedding, and according to Mark's photo, the one with the fundraiser, she was still with him in May. I didn't call Josh. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hear his voice. I wasn't sure what it would sound like, full of confusion or defensiveness or worse. Nothing at all. Instead, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I sent Lauren a message. Just a few words, measured, civil. Can we meet? Just you and me. There are things I need to understand. I won't cause a scene. Eleanor. She didn't reply that day, or the next. But on the third morning, just as I was stepping out to get the mail, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Her name flashed on the screen like a dare. Lauren. Fine. Tomorrow. 11 a.m. Cafe on Sycamore. Just us. No greeting, no warmth. Just control. Still trying to set the terms, even now. I stared at the message for a long moment, heart suddenly pounding like it used to when I had to speak in front of the PTA. I didn't reply. I just memorized the time and place. That night, I dreamed of a hallway with hundreds of doors. Behind each one was a version of the past, some warm, some shadowed, some echoing with laughter I hadn't heard in years. But one door was different. It wasn't locked, just waiting. And when I opened it, I saw a girl, maybe 9 or 10, standing in the middle of an empty room, holding a crayon drawing in her hands. I couldn't see her face, but I knew she was mine. And she whispered without looking up, "She's lying to all of us." I woke up before I could ask who she meant. The cafe on Sycamore hadn't changed much in the last 10 years. It still smelled faintly of burnt espresso and lemon muffins. The floor was worn where people lined up near the counter. The lights above each table were low, like they were trying not to disturb anyone. I arrived 10 minutes early. I didn't order anything. My hands were shaking too much. Lauren walked in exactly at 11:02. Not late, not early. Just enough to make me feel like she was the one in control. She wore a cream sweater and jeans, perfectly ironed, a thin gold chain around her neck. No makeup, but she looked flawless in that deliberate, quiet way she always had. The kind of woman who doesn't try to impress, because she already knows she's won. She didn't smile when she saw me. She didn't even say hello. She just sat down across from me, crossed her legs, and set her phone face down on the table. A barrier, but not a wall. "I'm here," she said. Not "good morning," not "how are you," just "I'm here." I looked at her, really looked at her, and suddenly I realized something odd. Her eyes weren't cold. They were tired, wary, yes, but not angry, not defensive, as if she had expected this moment for a long time and had simply been waiting for it to arrive like a slow-moving train. I reached into my purse and set the folder down between us. Just one item inside, The DNA test. Her eyes flicked to it. She didn't touch it. I take it you've spoken to Mark, she said. It wasn't a question. It was confirmation. Yes, I said. He showed me this, and the photos, the timeline. Silence. Then, after a beat. And? I want the truth, I said, my voice low but steady. All of it. She leaned back slightly, fingers lightly drumming the table once, not nervously, but methodically, as if she was choosing a tempo to speak by. You already think you have it, she said. What do you need me for? I don't need you, I said. I just want to hear what you will say when it's your turn to speak. That caught her off guard for just a second. A flicker. Of what? Shame? Resentment? Then came the exhale. Long, slow, almost relieved. All right, she said finally. You want the truth? Here it is. I got pregnant. I wasn't ready. Mark and I were a mess, financially, emotionally. He drank too much. He thought a baby would fix things. I blinked. He said you were planning a life together. We were, she said. A bad one. That made my skin crawl. She folded her arms like she was holding something in, or bracing for impact. I left because I knew what that life would become. I didn't want to raise a child in a crumbling apartment with a man who couldn't hold down a job. Josh was safe, steady. He wanted a family. I gave him one. You gave him a lie, I said, the words sharp in my mouth. She didn't flinch. I gave him purpose. Her voice was so matter-of-fact it stunned me. And when were you going to tell him? I wasn't, she said simply. Because I knew what would happen. This, you, him doubting everything. Because everything was a lie. She finally leaned forward, voice low now, intense. You think I planned it all, don't you? That I trapped him? That I mapped out every step like some kind of villain in a soap opera? Her eyes flashed for the first time. But the truth is messier than that. I did what I had to do, and the rest just happened. I stared at her, barely breathing. And the cruise? I asked. Cutting me off, little by little. Was that just something that happened, too? Her face shifted, almost imperceptibly, but it changed. That wasn't personal, she said, but her voice cracked, ever so slightly, on the word personal, and suddenly the air between us felt sharper, colder. I didn't want interference, she said. I needed control. Josh listens to you. The kids love you. That's dangerous. There it was. No excuses. No sugar. Just the truth, stripped down and offered like a weapon she wasn't afraid to use. I stared at her, not out of shock, out of understanding, because I'd known women like her before, but I had never imagined one would be inside my family. She stood up before I could say anything else. Her hands were steady, her gaze unwavering. I won't fight you on this, she said. If Josh wants the truth, he'll find it. But I'm done playing the role. I did what I had to do. I made sure they were fed, loved, safe. They're not safe from lies, I said. She paused. Then, with a flicker of something almost resembling sadness, she said, You're right, but it's not my job to fix that anymore. And she walked out. No apology, no backwards glance, just the sound of the bell above the cafe door, chiming once behind her. I sat there for a long time, not because I was broken, because I was thinking about the next move, not revenge, not anger, just the truth, finally brought to light, not for her, not even for me, but for the children and for my son, who had no idea that everything he believed was about to collapse. I didn't call him first. I knew better. If I gave him even a minute of warning, he'd retreat into the fog Lauren had been weaving around him for years, that soft, suffocating web of gentle half-truths and careful misdirections. No, I needed to look my son in the eyes. So I waited until the following Saturday, when I knew they'd be home. I baked a pie, not to soften the blow, but because I needed something to do with my hands. I wrapped it carefully, put on my best coat, and drove across town in silence. The neighborhood was quiet, as it always was. Perfect lawns, matching shutters, every mailbox exactly the same. But even perfection hums with something underneath when you know where to listen. I rang the bell twice. The porch light was off. It was daylight after all, but still it felt symbolic. Josh opened the door. He looked surprised, tired too. He hadn't shaved. "Mom," he said, "is everything okay?" "That depends," I said. He blinked. "Come in." I stepped inside. The living room was spotless, but cold. No toys on the floor, no drawings on the fridge. It felt like a showroom. He led me to the kitchen. I placed the pie on the counter but didn't offer it. Instead, I took the envelope from my purse. "Josh," I said, "I need you to read something." He frowned. "Is this about the cruise again?" "Mom, I told you." "No," I said sharply. "This is not about the cruise. This is about your son." That froze him. He looked at me, really looked, for the first time in years. Then slowly, he reached for the envelope and opened it. He read the test. He read the letter from Mark, and he stopped breathing. I let the silence settle. I knew better than to fill it. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. What is this?" "It's the truth," I said gently. "I've met Mark. I've seen everything." He looked up, eyes wide. "Lauren," she said, "he was just a friend from years ago." She lied. He stood up suddenly, pacing now, clutching the paper like it might burst into flame. "I don't understand. She would never... Why would she do this?" I didn't answer. He wasn't asking me. He was asking himself. He sat down again, the chair creaking under the weight of everything crashing in on him. I waited. Then I said, "Josh, I need you to hear me. This wasn't your fault. You loved that child. You raised him. That doesn't change because of a piece of paper." "But it does, Mom," he whispered. "It changes everything." "No," I said firmly. "It changes the story, but not your heart, and not who that boy knows as his father." He looked like he wanted to believe me. And for a moment, just a moment, he did. Then his eyes narrowed. "You've known how she is, haven't you?" I didn't lie. "Yes, but I didn't have proof, and you weren't ready to hear it." He slumped forward, head in his hands. My God, what else has she lied about? I didn't answer, because I knew, soon, he'd start to uncover it for himself. Later that night, he called me. I was still sitting in my kitchen staring at the old photo of Josh holding baby Toby. His voice on the phone was steadier now. "I asked her," he said. "She didn't even deny it, just said she did what she had to do." Like it was all so reasonable. "And the kids?" I asked softly. "She's gone," he said. "She left, packed a bag, said she wouldn't fight for custody, said she was done pretending." Silence stretched long between us. Then he said, "I don't think she ever really wanted a family, not the kind we are." "No," I said. "She wanted control, not love." He paused. "What do I do now?" And for the first time in years, I felt something warm rise in me. "You come home," I said. "You bring those kids home. We start again. You're not alone." He didn't speak for a while, but I heard it, that deep, ragged exhale, like he'd been holding his breath for years. The next day he brought them over, Ellie, Max, and Toby, quiet, unsure, clinging to his stuffed dinosaur. He didn't know yet. He didn't need to, not today. He climbed into my lap like he always had, and for a while we sat like that, The four of us on the old couch, wrapped in something fragile but growing stronger with every breath. And as Josh watched his children laugh, really laugh, for the first time in weeks, something shifted in his face. Something opened, not because everything was healed, but because healing had finally begun. I called him 3 days later. Mark answered on the second ring. His voice was cautious at first, as if he wasn't sure whether I was calling to thank him or to shut a door he'd barely cracked open. I told Josh everything, I said. Lauren left. There was a pause. I could almost hear him exhale through the phone. I didn't expect that to happen so fast, he said quietly. Neither did I admitted. But sometimes the truth pulls a thread, and the whole thing unravels faster than you'd think. I've spent so long being afraid of that thread, he said. Afraid of what it would mean for him, for Toby. I softened. He doesn't know yet, but he will. And when that time comes, I want him to have as many people around him who love him as possible. The silence on the line deepened, not heavy, just full. Then he said it, not quite believing it himself. You want me to be part of his life? I don't want anything that's not good for him, I said, but I also believe in second chances, if you're willing to earn it. I am, he said quickly. I've waited a long time to be a father. I just didn't think I'd get the chance. You don't get a chance, I said gently. You build one, slowly, carefully, patiently. He was quiet again, and when he spoke, his voice cracked just a little. I'll do whatever it takes. We met in the park 2 days later. I brought Toby and the other 2 kids under the pretense of a picnic. Mark kept his distance at first, sitting on a bench under the shade of a willow tree, watching the children laugh as they chased each other around the old oak. He had no idea how to approach, and I didn't rush it. But children have a way of sniffing out what adults are afraid to say. Eventually, Toby wandered over, eyeing Mark with cautious curiosity. Mark looked at me, asking permission without words. I nodded, and so he knelt, slow and careful, not looming, not pushing. Hey, buddy, he said gently. That's a cool dinosaur you've got. Toby looked down at his toy, then up at him. This is Rexy, he said. He doesn't like loud noises. Mark smiled. Neither do I. It was nothing, a beginning made of almost nothing. But beginnings don't need to be loud. They just need to be honest. Back at home, I watched Josh in the kitchen helping Ellie with her homework. He was still quiet, still walking through the smoke of everything that had been burned down. But there was clarity in his face, like a man rebuilding from ash instead of pretending the house hadn't collapsed. Do you think I failed him? He asked me later that night, his voice raw. No, I said. You were lied to. That's not the same. I feel like I raised a son who wasn't mine. No, I said again, firmer this time. You loved a son who is yours in every way that matters. That's what counts. That's what will stay. He looked at me, not convinced, but comforted. And that was enough for now. The next few weeks were messy. Lauren sent 2 short emails, neither of them apologetic. Both were curt, legal, full of detachment. She didn't ask about the children. She didn't mention Toby. She vanished from their lives with the same calculated ease she had entered them. Josh started the paperwork. Custody, school forms, therapy sessions for the kids, all of it. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And every day that passed, they came back to life. Ellie started drawing again. Max made jokes again. Toby, though quiet, smiled more often. And once, just once, I caught him sitting beside Mark on the porch, both of them watching birds in the trees, saying nothing, but close enough that their knees almost touched. Sometimes, justice doesn't come like thunder. Sometimes it arrives like this, A table once set for 8, now full again, with the right people. A boy no longer asked to pretend. A man who lost everything, choosing to stay and build anyway. A son learning that truth doesn't destroy love, it reveals it. And a woman, once forgotten, standing at the center of her family again, not by force, not out of pity, but because she belonged there all along. Autumn came early that year. The wind turned brisk in September, and the leaves in the backyard began their slow, spectacular collapse, reds and golds, like tiny fires falling from the trees. Every morning, I woke up to the soft sound of rakes dragging across lawns and the smell of someone's fireplace 2 doors down. But inside my house, things were just beginning to bloom. The living room was a mess again. Toys in corners, juice cups half full, a trail of small shoes leading toward the stairs. The silence that once pressed against the walls had been replaced by the hum of life, small voices, footsteps, laughter from another room. One evening, I stood in the doorway of the kitchen and watched it all unfold like a scene from a play. Josh was helping Max with a science project, elbow deep in glitter and glue. Ellie was practicing her spelling on the fridge with alphabet magnets, occasionally pausing to ask if beautiful had 2 L's. And in the corner, near the sliding door, Mark and Toby were building something from blocks, not speaking, just focused, side by side. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was watching from outside the glass. I was in it, right where I belonged. Lauren never returned, not even to fight. There were rumors, a new city, a different name, but I let them go. She had already taken enough of our peace, and what she left behind was stronger than what she tried to control. Because once the mask came off, once the silence broke, her power dissolved like sugar in rainwater. All those carefully spun threads snapped. All those years of distance, shrinking in the rear view like a bad dream. We didn't speak her name often, but her absence became a lesson. We don't lie in this house. We don't vanish when things get hard. We face them, together. Toby eventually learned the truth, not in one shattering moment, but gently, gradually, with every question answered honestly and every fear held with care. He never called Mark Dad, but he began to sit closer, ask questions, trust. And Mark never pushed. He simply stayed. That, I think, mattered most of all. We had a new family photo taken that winter. It was the kids' idea. They picked the spot, the field behind the park, where the old trees bent just right, and the snow fell quietly like something holy. We dressed in mismatched scarves and boots. Josh tried to wrangle everyone into place. Ellie kept laughing. Max made faces. Toby squinted into the sun, holding my hand, and when the camera clicked, I looked around and realized this was it. Not the family I thought I had, the one I chose to fight for, built not on fantasy, but on forgiveness and truth and effort, real love, earned, not assumed. I'm 60 now. That number used to scare me, but now it feels like a crown, not for surviving the years, but for living them with eyes open, heart steady, voice no longer quiet. People like Lauren think they win because they know how to shape a story. But the truth, the real truth, is that integrity outlasts every performance. That love, real love, the kind you feed, protect, and sometimes fight for tooth and nail, is stronger than manipulation dressed up in pretty words. She walked away, but we stayed, we healed, and we grew. And on cold nights when the wind scratches at the window and the fire crackles low, I sometimes sit in that same kitchen, wrap my hands around a warm mug, and smile, because goodness won. Because love rose back up from the ashes, because I am no longer forgotten, and neither are the people I love. Not anymore. Not ever again. So that's how it all happened. I didn't get the birthday I planned, but I got something much more important. The truth, a chance to rebuild, and a family that finally sees each other, really sees each other for who we are. Life isn't always fair. Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But even then, you can choose who you become after the storm. You can choose to stay kind, to stay human. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories like mine, stories of ordinary people who've lived through betrayal, silence, heartbreak, and still found a way to stand back up. Leave a like if you believe that even after everything, goodness still matters. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were in my place? Thank you for listening. Take care of each other. And don't forget, some of the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who've been forgotten and kept going anyway.